Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, delivered Thursday in Manama, Bahrain, an address to the participants in the 33rd session of the Arab Summit, read out on his behalf by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf. Arab leaders have condemned the ongoing Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip, describing the atrocities committed against civilians and the unprecedented violations of international and humanitarian law, including the targeting of civilians, the use of siege and starvation and weapons of war, and attempts and forced displacement. And the Zionist occupation forces are intensifying their attacks on the Palestinian territories, where the death toll has risen to over 35,000 martyrs and almost 80,000 wounded since the beginning of the genocidal war against the innocent Palestinian people 7 months ago. And the League of Arab States has called for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, which has been subjected to a savage Zionist aggression since October 7, 2023, according to the final declaration adopted at the end of the 33rd session of its summit in Manama, Bahrain. The Bahrain declaration, adopted by the 22 members of the Arab League, demands an immediate end to the genocide being committed by the Zionist entity in the Gaza Strip, which has resulted in the martyrdom of more than 35,000 Palestinians and the wounding of almost 80,000 others. The document also vigorously condemned the obstacles imposed by the Zionist entity to efforts to achieve a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and its continued military escalation through the extension of its aggression towards the Palestinian city of Rafah, despite international warnings of the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of this aggression. The members of the League of Arab States stressed the need to halt the aggression against the Gaza Strip, the withdrawal of the occupation forces from all parts of the enclave, and the lifting of the siege imposed on them. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has held bilateral talks with the head of the Lebanese government in charge of managing current affairs, Najib Mikati, on the sidelines of his participation as representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, in the proceedings of the Arab Summit in Manama. According to a ministry press release, during these talks, the two parties discussed a number of issues relating to economic relations between Algeria and Lebanon, as well as ways and means of promoting them to wider prospects capable of meeting the aspirations of the two brotherly peoples. And Arab leaders have condemned the ongoing Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip, decrying the atrocities committed against civilians and the unprecedented violations of international and humanitarian law, including the targeting of civilians, the use of siege and starvation as weapons of war, and attempts at forced displacement. The details in this report with our colleague Saad Bougazi.
President Tebboune said in his address that the paralysis of the mechanisms for multilateral international action.
We start with the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, who delivered Thursday in Manama, Bahrain, an address to the participants in the 33rd session of the Arab Summit, read out on his behalf by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf. The President of the Republic said in his speech that the Arab Summit is meeting against a difficult international backdrop and an increasingly complex regional situation. The acute crisis that has hit international relations hard is now a reality whose repercussions are being felt in every corner of the world. Saad Bouazi has more details.
President Tebboune said in his address that the paralysis of the mechanisms for multilateral international action led by our UN and its central body, the Security Council, is further proof of the seriousness of this acute crisis, which is jeopardizing the present and the future of peace, security, development, and prosperity in the world. As you know, the President went on, our Arab region is also going through a pivotal period fraught with challenges and crises, the dangerousness and complexity of which are reflected in the existential threats to our brothers in Gaza and the dangers facing the Palestinian cause aimed at its liquidation. Today, more than ever, he said, our central cause needs a united and strong Arab nation that is in the vanguard of its defenders and at the forefront of those working for the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state as a just, lasting and definitive solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. To this end, since joining the Security Council, Algeria has worked faithfully and devotedly to raise the Palestinian cause to the rank of a central cause and the oldest issue on the agenda of our United Nations organization, he added, but also as the most important issue to be placed on top of the international community's priorities and to be supported by mobilizing all the necessary efforts given the place it occupies in the hearts of our peoples.
Our central cause needs today, more than ever before, a unified and strong Arab nation, leading the ranks of its supporters, advocating for its benefit, and being at the forefront of efforts towards the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state as a just, permanent, and lasting solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. On this basis, Algeria has faithfully, earnestly, and honestly worked since it joined the Security Council to empower the Palestinian cause to recover its central position as the oldest cause on the agenda of our UN organization and as the most prominent issue deserving to be the priority of international community and as the most important cause that requires mobilizing and rallying efforts for its victory in a way suitable to its status in the hearts of our peoples and the reality of our nations.
In this context, and in addition to the requirements dictated by the current situation in terms of intensifying pressure to put an end to the Israeli aggression, guarantee the delivery of humanitarian aid, and put an end to the deportation of Palestinians, our firm conviction in Algeria is that the post-war period in Gaza must be completely different and opposed to the pre-war period. The post-war period in Gaza calls for the unification of ranks, the federation of energies, and the mobilization of efforts to relaunch a settlement of the conflict that is underpinned by just, lasting and definitive bases in line with the international instruments to which the international community has adhered, including references, safeguards, and immutable legality. The post-war period in Gaza must undeniably give rise to the Palestinian national project consisting of the construction of an independent, sovereign Palestinian state without restrictions, conditions, or obstacles of any kind.
أننا في الجزائر نعتقد تمام الاعتقاد أن ما بعد الحرب على غزة.
In Algeria, we firmly believe that the post-war in Gaza should be completely different from what preceded it. The post-war in Gaza requires closing ranks, unifying energies, and mobilizing efforts to establish a solution to the conflict based on fair, permanent, and final principles in line with the established references, standards, and legitimacy recognized by the international community. The post-war in Gaza must inevitably lead to the accomplishment of the Palestinian national project, represented by the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state without any restrictions, conditions, or obstacles.
With this in mind, said the head of state, we welcome the growing momentum of official recognition of the State of Palestine and the increased support for the plan to admit it as a full member of the United Nations. The content and objectives of the historic decision adopted a few days ago by the UN General Assembly reflect a historic truth, a resounding truth that the entire international community has fortunately just recognized, namely that the root of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict lies in the sabotage of the Palestinian national project, and that the solution to this conflict lies in making this project a reality and speeding up the building of the State of Palestine.
We warmly welcome the increasing momentum of official recognitions of the State of Palestine and the growing support for its full membership in the United Nations. The historic decision recently adopted by the General Assembly of our UN organization reflects in its content and objectives a historical reality. This is the irrefutable reality which the international community has finally recognized in its entirety. The essence of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict lies in undermining the Palestinian national project. The resolution of this conflict can only come through the accomplishment of this project and the expedited establishment of the Palestinian state. We resonate deeply with the essence of this resolution and once again call on the Security Council to reconsider the issue of the State of Palestine's membership to make up for the opportunities it missed and made the entire international community miss to give justice and rights to the Palestinian people.
Although I have spoken so extensively about the Palestinian cause, went on the President of the Republic, the fact remains that we are just as sensitive to the multiple and complex crises affecting several Arab countries at the security, political, economic and social levels. The situation in Sudan, Libya and Yemen, sister countries, and in the rest of the Arab world, deprived of peace and security, also calls for a major Arab role that can extinguish the fire of discord between the children of the same country and protect them against the threats and dangers they face as a result of increasingly ferocious foreign intervention.
The situation in brotherly Sudan, in brotherly Libya, in brotherly Yemen, and in the rest of the Arab world, deprived of security and stability, and which also need a prominent Arab role that contributes to extinguishing the fuse of conflict among the people of one nation and ward off the threats and dangers that target them as a result of the increasingly expanding, serious, and fierce foreign interventions.
If joint Arab action is to be effective and efficient at this particular juncture and in the face of the major challenges it presents, the issue of reforming the Arab League must be placed at the top of the agenda, a reform whose urgency is becoming ever more pressing, especially as the reasons for it are now known to all. He added,
The efficiency and effectiveness of joint Arab action in these particular circumstances and the serious challenges that characterize them and which bring it back to the top of their priorities is the issue of reforming the League of Arab States and evaluating its working methods. A reform whose necessity is strengthened, a reform for which demand is increasing, and a reform whose origins have become clear to everyone. Firstly, reform is imperative to make up for the efforts and endeavors we missed in facing the current challenges. Secondly, reform is imperative to unite our ranks and consolidate them more closely in defending our common interests and central causes. Thirdly and finally, reform is imperative to reconsider joint Arab action, restore the health of Arab world, and restore its position as an influential international actor in the course of issues on the global scene. And as I said before, Arab leaders have condemned the ongoing Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip, decrying the atrocities committed against civilians and the unprecedented violations of international and humanitarian law, including the targeting of civilians, the use of siege and starvation as weapons of war, and attempt at force displacement. Said Boughazi has more details again.
This condemnation was issued in a statement by Arab leaders during the 33rd Arab Summit held in Bahrain's capital Manama. The statement, delivered by Ahmed Abul Ghait, Secretary General of the Arab League, addressed the extensive Zionist attacks on Gaza, including the city of Rafah, which has become a refuge for over 1 million displaced persons, leading to severe humanitarian consequences. The leaders specifically condemned the Zionist occupation's takeover of the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing, aimed at tightening the blockade on civilians, which has halted the operation of the crossing and the flow of humanitarian aid. They demanded an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, an end to all attempts at forced displacement, the lifting of all forms of the Zionist blockade, and the unimpeded and sustained access to humanitarian aid for the Gaza Strip. The leaders also called for the immediate withdrawal of occupation forces from Rafah. Additionally, the leaders denounced the targeting of humanitarian and UN organizations in Gaza by occupation forces, the obstruction of their operations, and the attacks on aid convoys, including assaults by Jewish settlers on Jordanian aid convoys. They criticized the occupation authorities for failing to fulfill their legal responsibilities to protect these convoys and called for an immediate international investigation into these attacks. The Arab leaders urged the international community and influential global powers to move beyond political calculations and double standards in addressing international crises. They called on these entities to uphold their ethical and legal responsibilities in confronting the Zionist aggressive practices and to clearly characterize them as blatant violations of international and humanitarian law.
And the toll of Zionist genocidal aggression against the Gaza Strip has risen to 35,303 martyrs and 79,261 wounded since October 7 last year, according to the Palestinian health authorities. According to the same source, the Zionist occupation army has committed 4 massacres in the last 24 hours in the Gaza Strip, killing 31 people and injuring 56 others. And the UN has announced the forced displacement of more than 700,000 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, the target of genocidal aggression by the Zionist occupation forces since October 7, 2023. The current situation of the Palestinians who have been forced to move was reported in a message posted on the official Zionist account. And the government media office in Gaza has announced that the number of journalists killed has risen to 147 since the start of the savage Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip launched on October 7, 2023. In a press release, the office announced that 4 more journalists have fallen as martyrs, including 1 woman, adding that they fell during the genocidal aggression in the Gaza Strip. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for more countries to recognize the state of Palestine, the media reported in a joint press conference with Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze on a visit to Turkey. Erdogan said that mankind should support the state of Palestine through law and diplomacy, the struggle for freedom for which the Palestinian people have paid a heavy tribute. Algeria affirmed yesterday in Malabo, the capital of Equatorial Guinea, that it will remain a committed partner supporting all initiatives aimed at strengthening cooperation and economic integration in Africa. The statement was made on the occasion of Algeria's participation in the proceedings of the 4th Ordinary Session of the African Union's Specialized Technical Committee for Trade, Tourism, Industry and Mineral Resources, organized from 13 to 17 of the current month, with a high-level delegation chaired by the head of the cabinet of the Ministry of Trade and Export Promotion, Souheila Abelash. On this occasion, the delegation presented valuable communications for the achievement of the objectives set by the African Union Agency. And the Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arqabi, is taking part in the proceedings of the 3rd edition of the International Forum Towards the South, the European Strategy for a New Geopolitical, Economic and Socio-Cultural Season in the Mediterranean, held under the aegis of the Italian government on 17 and 18 of the current month in Sorrento, Italy, according to a press release from the ministry. And a memorandum of cooperation in the field of digitization and the digital economy has been signed in the People's Republic of China between the High Commissioner for Digitization, Maryam Ben Mouloud, and the Chinese Minister of Industry and Information Technology, Xing Zhuanglong, according to a statement from the Office of the High Commissioner. During her visit to the People's Republic of China, Ms. Ben Mouloud had a high-level meeting with the Chinese Minister of Industry and Information Technology, during which the 2 parties examined venues for cooperation in the number of areas that are part of the process of achieving digital transformation, in addition to training and transfer of expertise. And finally, the Sahrawi political prisoner and member of the Gdei group, Abdullah Al-Wali Lakhfouni, who has been arbitrarily detained for more than a decade, has begun a 48-hour hunger strike to denounce the abuses of the Moroccan occupation forces and protest against the deprivation of medical care to which he is subjected. According to the family of the Sahrawi political prisoner, quoted by the League for the Protection of Sahrawi Political Prisoners, Abdullah Al-Wali Lakhfouni had demanded that the Moroccan prison authorities explain the reasons that led them to cancel his transfer to hospital to undergo medical examinations on his knee, as recorded in the medical file dated February 25, 2023. However, says the family, since that date, the prison authorities have never taken any steps to ensure that the Sahrawi political prisoner can receive the medical treatment he needs, and when their prison doctor was consulted, he indicated that he did not have full authority to approve his transfer. This demonstrates, adds the same source, the intentional medical negligence to which Al-Wali Lakhfouni is being subjected. And with this last piece of news, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for a weekly program with my colleague Hannah Dalil on architecture in Algeria. And for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin in English. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for now.